conference has been muted.
We're ready.
Okay, thank you. All systems are go then on our. All right. It's approaching 7 p.m. So good evening and welcome to our July 13th, 2021 regular meeting of council. I take it Councillor Lagasse is not joining us this evening then?
No, not this evening.
Pardon? Not this evening? No.
No.
Okay. Thank you. So we have quorum then. I would call us to order and I would take a motion to open our meeting, moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Viancore, that this meeting be opened at 7 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Our last meeting was on June 8th, 2021, and the minutes were in our package. I would take a mover and a seconder for those minutes. Moved by Councillor Viancore, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Is there any concerns with the minutes at all? Hearing none, that the minutes of the regular meeting held June 8th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Okay. Presentations and delegations. There was substantial information in the agenda package in writing related to short-term rentals. And it's my understanding that there's presenters related to the issue. Can they be migrated into our meeting now?
Yes, they will be.
As the agenda is laid out for the participants that are presenting this evening, first item and first presenter related to short-term rentals is Paul Preston. Do you have a presentation to make now?
Yeah, sure. Can I share my screen? Can you hear me?
We'll see how well it works, I guess, but
Okay, let me give it a go, okay?
okay.
Oh, nope, says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, give me just a second.
Okay.
Are you able to now?
Okay, I'll give it a try. Oh, nope, says I can't. Do you think I should try again, or we have to give up on that?
Okay, now try.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Yes.
Can you see the first slide?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see the
Okay, thanks very much.
Overview.
Thanks, Council, for your time and your leadership of our township. My wife and I have been here for 20 some years and loved it so much that we decided to move here full time. And we've always enjoyed dealing with Doug and the rest of the township officials. And we've enjoyed a really peaceful, wonderful existence here up until just recently. And that's why we've come to see you and ask for your help. So we welcomed our new neighbors with open arms and shared our play areas with their children and helped them dig a trench across my property to access their internet tower. And then suddenly a month later, 3 carloads of 12 people arrived from the GTA, which was contravening the provincial COVID restrictions of the time, and a tourist accommodation began beside us, which continues to this day. As you can see, we live up in this little corner in the residential limited service area on Lake Talon. I tried to blow that up. It's a little blurry, but you can see it's all residential limited services. And just as a reminder, the allowed uses are as cottage dwellings, group homes, gardens, suites. I'm not sure what that is, guest cabins. So very, very limited usages. Other residential zones allow bed and breakfast. This one doesn't, but they're not doing a bed and breakfast next to us anyways. Commercial resort C3 allows tourist establishments, as does C2. I couldn't find any, when I searched, there was no allowed uses of tourist homes in the township zonings. There's a definition of dwelling, which is, maybe it's hidden up there, but you can see for yourself a pretty self-explanatory definition of dwellings in the zoning bylaws. And there's a definition of a tourist establishment, which is an establishment that provides sleeping accommodation with or without meals, which is happening next door. Or you could call it a tourist home, which is a dwelling unit, excluding a hotel, motel, or cabin, which rooms are lodging for hire or pay, which is happening next door. So quite frankly, this property next door is now a tourist accommodation or a tourist home. This is not a permitted use in the residential limited services zone. It's severely disturbing the nature of our isolated, private, and previously secure residential community, and inserting this tourist accommodation business within the middle of our community with a large number of steady flow of tourists who are strangers who aren't invested in our community into the midst of our peaceful residential neighborhood is greatly impairing the peaceful enjoyment of our properties for myself, my wife, my family, and my friends and my neighbors. And we respectfully ask that the township enforce the bylaws immediately. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. On the same subject, Jerry Knox, is he going to speak this evening to this issue? I'll get you, I guess, just to close out your
Yeah, sorry,
screen sharing.
I'll figure it out just a second here. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Jerry Knox, on the same subject matter, are you available to address us this evening?
I believe he said he would not be presenting this evening.
Okay. And then we have Beth and Dawn Scott also. Do you wish to address council at this time? Okay, we have written correspondence from those 2 parties, as I just mentioned.
Okay.
I think she's coming to the mic there, Mayor.
Okay. We would like to present our concern with regard to the use of cottages as short-term rentals on Talon Lake and Pine Lake, whose major motive is profit. The Mattawa Historical Waterway, a Canadian heritage river, is unique and should be treated as such. The area that stretches from Tote Lake to Mattawa was set aside in 1970 to be protected from development. The First Nations people are in the forefront of the news, and their interest in preserving this tract should be forefront in our plans for the future. We propose we keep the north and our waters protected. We have given way to noise, pollution, and overuse, harming fish, bird, and mammals that have struggled to survive here with the abuses we have already inflicted. Why would we condone an opening to more human influence? The negative environment impacts of tourism are substantial. They include the depletion of local natural resources, as well as pollution and waste problems. Tourism puts enormous stress on local land use and can lead to soil erosion, increased population or pollution, natural habitat loss, and more pressure on endangered species. Be forward thinkers. We can be an example of appreciating what we as Canadian citizens have, trying to maintain a place that cherishes nature, the water, and this land. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Also on the subject this evening, short-term rentals. Robin Edwards, I believe you're on our screen.
Yes, thanks so much for having us. Both Amy and I are here online. I guess we are the agreed owners of 98 Grey Rock Lane. We have made a written submission to council, and I'm not going to repeat the content of that submission. What I can say is when we purchased our property, we purchased it as a primary residence for ourselves, for the intention. Eventually, we had thought to retire in our home. We knew, given the current market, that the price that we paid for our cottage, we knew at the time we purchased it that we would have to rent out our cottage in order to make our financial ends meet, in essence. So we knew that. We actually hired a lawyer, got advice. We were told that as an unregulated area that we would be able to rent our cottage. We spoke to our realtor. We weren't looking to run a commercial business. We're not investors. We've never owned a second property before. We bought this cottage for our family. Unfortunately, we're not inheritors of a cottage. We don't own. This is not a massive cottage. This is not a newly built cottage. This is a cottage that we bought for the purposes of a legacy to our children over time. And yes, absolutely transparently, we do have to rent it for a certain amount of time. We knew that when we bought the cottage. We raised that with both our council and with our realtor. We are new to the community. We are 60 days into this. I'm not sure how we could be accused of running a tourist business when we're compliant with the law. We have spoken with the bylaw officer countless times who's agreed with us. We've reached out with the city planner. We understand the law. We understand our rights. We have rented at the time that this issue was raised. We had rented our cottage for one weekend for 3 nights to 8 people. There are not busloads of people. We bought a cottage on an isolated road because that's the people we are, and that's the type of experience that we're looking at for ourselves and our children. We did rent for the weekend. It is our legal right to do that. We do intend on renting our cottage on occasion. Last week, for example, a family doctor colleague took a week at our cottage, and yes, they did pay us some money, as is our right. We are not trying to change the community. At the outset, our neighbors on both sides were very warm. They were very engaging. They gave us gifts until we rented our cottage for the weekend. I don't suppose it was much different than had we had friends at our cottage for the weekend. I'm not sure how their conduct, frankly, was any different than ours was. In all honesty, we've been told by members of the community that strangers are not welcome there and they don't want strangers there. We are strangers. We happen to own our cottage, so I suppose that sets us aside somewhat. But up until 61 days ago, we were renters. We've rented cottages for 20 years or more. We have been fortunate enough recently to purchase a cottage. We've purchased a cottage that we could not afford to rent ourselves at this point in time because of the pricing of our cottage. We hired an executive firm to source out renters, and we had rented for one weekend, and then last week we rented again, all compliant to the law. We have not had any complaints about our weekend rental nor the week's rental. We have heard from our renters about the noise of our neighbors and their social time, which we actually think is quite reasonable and fine. Our neighbors are entitled to the quiet enjoyment of their property. We don't inquire about the countless boats or cars and who's in them and whether they're renters or friends or family. We simply are trying to respect. We aren't here to be advocates for short-term rentals. This is not a community that we know. So we're new to the community. We came here to invest our family and our future in this community. We are being ostracized on our road, which I think is a tragedy because I think we have a lot to offer. But I would encourage council to reiterate the law as it's been reiterated to us. We've been told that the Prestons, for example, have been informed on a few occasions that we are entitled to rent. We can't say that's happened or not, but we have been told that that is the law and the law has been reflected back to them. You know, if the council, well, I would encourage council to participate in a more strenuous process of reviewing the law. Frankly, we're not poster kids or poster people for short-term rentals. We are two people trying to raise a family and need to rent our cottage, absent the privilege perhaps of our neighbors. That's simply where we are at. Perhaps this case is a good one for council to move forward and accelerate review of your laws to be more specific. But what we would like to see, frankly, is a process where the community's voice is heard. And we are not members of the community yet, and we may not be, as we may be driven out. But we think that the community should be heard, not just the voice of the privileged. We think that the community, there are people who rent for all sorts of reasons around us. There are hundreds of rentals on Trout Lake, Lake Nipissing, even Lake Talon. And, you know, a transparent process that is fair, that is equitable, that is honest, and that brings forward all the voices of the people in the community would be something that we would strongly advocate for. You know, we didn't even know about this council meeting. We came across it because we unilaterally reached out to the planner to make sure that we were still within the confines of the law, as our neighbors have increased the pressure and harassment of us. We thought, well, maybe we have to go above the bylaw officer and speak to the planner directly. So in reaching out, we found out about this meeting by total accident. And what I would say to you is having other voices at the table besides perhaps the lucky and the privileged is really an important thing. Whether you decide to cancel short-term rentals or regulate them more specifically or allow them is not really our prerogative at this point as new members to the community, but we would urge you to engage in a process where every voice is heard at the table, not just those that are accidentally stumbling upon an opportunity to be heard. You know, we are really trying to do the right thing. We're given legal advice that we were doing the right thing, and it has been a nightmare since June the 5th. And I'm not sure what our family is going to do in light of this, but as very privileged people ourselves, as a lawyer and a physician, the fact that we are beaten to the ground at this point certainly doesn't speak to the smaller people out there trying to make a go of things themselves in a really tough climate at a tough time. We came to this cottage with great dreams and hopes, which have been largely shattered. But we came to a wilderness environment, not to erode the wilderness, but to bring it up and share it with people like ourselves. So, you know, we haven't had busloads of people. We've had 8 people for 3 nights in our cottage that rented from us, but we do have 7 children. And we do have a large extended family, and they will be there, and we have no faith that they will be safely at our cottage. We have no faith that renters from us will be safely at our cottage because our cottage is no longer a safe place. So we would ask council simply to reiterate the state of the law, to clarify this. Perhaps we've gotten poor legal advice. Perhaps the bylaw officer has been erroneous in the advice given to us, but essentially we're just asking for clarification so we can try and make the most informed decision we can about our future on this road, which frankly is quite abysmal given the conduct of our neighbors and driving us out. I think that's the only thing we'd have to say.
Thank you.
Thank goodness.
Thank God.
Okay, thank you. I was remiss there earlier in my agenda there was mention, Mr. Montemuro wanted to address council, I believe, too, which came after the agenda was printed. Is that, do you wish to address council, sir?
I would just like to say I certainly support the comments that Paul has mentioned, and Catherine's speaking was, I think, right to the point. It's unfortunate that the other speaker is referring to the township as unorganized or unregulated, and in fact it is an organized township and well organized and well run, and I certainly appreciate all of the efforts that council puts forward on our behalf, and I thank you very much for that. I'm not going to reiterate everything that I wrote in my submission to council, but I'm hopeful that council will have the time to review my comments. I will say that as an RLS designated area, certainly running a tourist establishment in that type of zoning is contrary to the bylaws, and many parts of that too, I think, don't align with the official plan of the area. So I encourage council to make sure that all members of the township and taxpayers of this township abide by the laws, the bylaws, and follow the plans. And with that, I'll thank you for the time, and I'll yield back anything to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there either member of council that wishes to ask any questions at this point or make any comment? Okay.
Mr.
Just
Mayor,
to, yeah, yes, Councilor Bradford.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their comments. And I guess we have some work to do on that. So that's about it for now. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Kathy and Brian Shoup believe that they were on the agenda, and their neighbors greatly affected as well. Can they speak, please?
Okay. I don't see them on my page, but I see them on my screen. So yes, you could have a few moments.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hearing this brief presentation tonight regarding the regulation of short-term vacation home rentals within the Bonfield Township official plan and zoning bylaws. My name is Brian Shoup, and I have been a cottage resident at 94 Grey Rock Lane on Talon Lake since 1986. On June the 9th, 2021, we submitted a complaint to the Township of Bonfield regarding the operation of a short-term vacation rental by new owners of the cottage next to us at 98 Grey Rock Lane. Subsequently, we were presented with a couple of conflicting interpretations of existing zoning bylaws and feel it is very important and necessary to follow up and voice our concerns to council. Our new neighbors were welcomed warmly by everyone on Grey Rock Lane when they took possession of the cottage on May the 5th, 2021. But on June the 4th, we were completely blindsided by the arrival of short-term Airbnb renters. There appeared to be about 3 families sharing the entire cabin next door for a long weekend, and the uncertainty of this new situation was very stressful. Subsequently, an additional 2 groups have come and stayed next door. We have had the privilege of enjoying a peaceful and secluded neighborhood for over 35 years. It now appears we find ourselves as seniors in our retirement years, potentially living next door to a motel, hotel in an area we can't imagine it would ever have been zoned for business or commercial use. In fact, it is our understanding that we are in a residential limited use zone that allows only for cottage or residential use. There are some particular concerns regarding the impact of this new operation in our neighborhood. We are accessible only by a private lane that is maintained by our small road association. There are serious questions about safety, liability, and misuse of essentially a single lane road used by an endless stream of unknown renters who are unfamiliar with the unique situation we have managed for decades as property owners. Renters, all strangers to us, view lake property as their resort vacation. In contrast, this is our cottage/home where we feel we have the right to expect peace, privacy, and security. So far, with the arrival of several groups of strangers next door, we have experienced a great deal of stress, unease, and discomfort in our own home for not knowing who was there and what to expect. Our quality of life here at our cottage is greatly affected by the short-term rental popping up next door, and we feel the security, safety, and privacy of all the members of our small residential community are at risk if this business and any others like it are allowed to continue operating. We believe zoning laws are meant to protect the welfare of people in a community with respect to land use and to allow for the peaceful enjoyment of their property as it was intended. We look forward to council addressing the issue of short-term vacation home rentals, such as Airbnb, through a review of the interpretation of the bylaws in the current official plan or by the addition of amendments if necessary. Your consideration on this matter is greatly appreciated, and I thank you once again for your time. And I just would like to ask if we have one more speaker that has a short presentation, if that's possible.
Yes, very briefly though, because they didn't appear, unless it's Jerry Knox. He's the only other name appearing on my agenda this evening. So
Sorry that I didn't respond to the email. My name is Valerie Creech. I live full-time at my home at 92 Grey Rock Lane on Talon Lake, and I have several very strong concerns about the proposed opening of an Airbnb in the recently sold cottage 2 doors down from me at 98 Grey Rock Lane. I pay substantial amount of property tax to the municipality yearly, and I feel that if this business is allowed to continue, the value of my place will be greatly reduced. I trust that this threat of decrease in property value should concern the municipality as well, and further encourage them to address the situation promptly. Grey Rock Lane is a private road. It's not a road of public access. We, the residents along our road, maintain the road with gravel and grading and arrange for snow removal and sanding in winter at our own expense. We do not get any help with this cost from the municipality, nor do we ask for it. However, it is unfair that the extra traffic and wear and tear due to the new revolving rental situation should cost us more money. And what of accidents? The increased traffic of this business will no doubt exponentially increase the likelihood of accidents along our very narrow winding road. We are being put at risk from this situation. There's no speed limit enforced, nor any police presence to encourage safe driving. Also, to be frank, I now feel unsafe living alone here, a woman in my 70s, with unknown transient strangers potentially prowling around my lane, my property, and my shoreline on a regular basis. In an urban setting, once again, a police presence could bring a sense of security, but we do not have that, nor have we felt the need for it in what has been our idyllic Northern Ontario setting, where we all knew each other and where we did not feel insecure before. When the new people first moved in, I brought over a bottle of wine and welcomed them to the neighborhood in the spirit of our neighborly residential tradition. There was no mention at that time of a proposed Airbnb business about to wreak havoc on our lives. I trust that those at the municipal office will quickly be able to put a stop to this proposed disruptive business. Thank you.
thank you. Is there any other questions? Councillor Foisey, do you have any remarks to make before I close out the matter? Okay, thank you. Just to, I guess, give word back related to the matter. It pained me today to read the documentation that everybody submitted on there, and it pained me on this basis, in that I believe everybody that spoke tonight, I take them at their word, and that they're all trying to do their best under their circumstances that they find themselves in. And in some of it spoke to the fact that, and I will say to Ms. Edwards, in that Grey Rock Lane and the community in there, as has been described by a number of the speakers here this evening, is totally off the municipal radar for decades now. Like, it's not a place where we have concern, and neighbor disputes are not a thing that happens there. So it troubles me that that this is now happening. Aside from that, though, and I understand how it can be, these, take this word in friendship, these little enclaves that we develop of friendships, they happen on Lake Nosbonsing. I know people that live there, and on their little private lane, you know, it becomes a little community of its own. And I don't doubt, after what I've read, that Grey Rock Lane is much the same. And when a new participant comes into the group, there's an adjustment that has to happen there. And this circumstance that we find ourselves in, of the short-term rentals factor being also in it, very much complicates. And I recognize the substantial difference that is in that mini community that's there. So while it's been reiterated by most of the speakers tonight that this is an issue, and that the municipality, you know, is in the no-win situation of needing to enforce the rules, and we need to become aware of what those rules are and apply them without bias to any of the parties. That's, you know, what we're about here and what we do. There's no many of the names on the screen tonight, I recognize the names, but the faces, many of them are new to me. So it's not that I've been a long-term thing around here, and it's not that there's personal bias in any of this. So have assurance, all parties, pro and con, that municipally we're going to sort this out based upon the facts and based upon, you know, what's right, using the policy that, first of all, is in place right now, and second of all, as we move forward to opening that dialogue of improving zoning provisions and things, to recognize this new reality that's out there of short-term rentals. And I bring that, I guess, to a close by stating this is not a surprise thing. It's relatively new in Bonfield Township, but it wasn't that long ago, perhaps slightly pre-COVID, so I'll say a year and a half ago, where the city of Toronto was grappling themselves with much this same matter, in that there was huge condo towers with, half of the ownership absentee, and the transient condo renters using a rental service much like Airbnb and others. And they were becoming de facto hotels, even though they were owned condos by some of them, in large numbers of condos in the tower, by investment companies. So our little municipality is not alone in trying to come to grips with short-term rental awareness, and how we choose to address it is something that we're going to have to address with public input. And there's no, I'll say this too, the last time the municipality went through an engagement of land use planning, zoning bylaw revision, and so forth, the general public interest was almost nil. And since that time, over the past 8 years, there's been a variety of issues that have come to light. You may well be aware of RVs on vacant lots is certainly something that this council has had a lot of dialogue with. This short-term rental matter and others related to land use planning are certainly going to, I believe, cause the next round of land use planning update and review to be much more of an engaged process than it has been thus far. So further on in our agenda tonight, there is recommendation. First of all, there was recommendation from the Director of Planning and Development, Doug LaPlante, who most of you, I believe, have spoken with at some point in your relation with the township. His recommendation to, first of all, the Planning Advisory Committee, which is their domain of land use planning, was that the municipality should seek consultants by way of a request for proposal to renew the official plan and zoning bylaw. That was endorsed last Wednesday at the Planning Advisory Committee. It's coming forward tonight as a recommendation from them to council, and I would expect we would move that forward this evening. But I guess to close out for tonight, and if I'm speaking perhaps only to Ms. Edwards at the moment, what I would say is, and as I've tried to describe, the kind of the ecosystem that's in Grey Rock Lane that you've become part of by ownership, this is what troubles me, in that all parties were working towards integrating you in a very positive manner, and you've described that yourself, and the other parties have done it through, you know, the gestures that any new person to a community would welcome and appreciate. All of that was there, and I'm hoping that we can move beyond this at some point and come back to that, because if we represent anything here in Bonfield Township, it's that we welcome newcomers, and we certainly don't try to drive them out. And if there's something in our policy provisions that we need to bring to clarity, I know in our invoice disbursements this evening, it would appear that we've sought some legal advice from our municipal lawyer. So I believe in the background there is, and I could ask the CAO for comment if he has any at the moment, there is work towards defining clearly what the present lay of the land is related to short-term rentals. And then, as I've just perhaps poorly described, there's a more lengthy process where public engagement will enter play of, you know, updating the zoning bylaw and so forth. But in the current moment, related to your short-term rental matter, I believe we're coming, if we don't have it tonight, we're coming very soon to a very clear answer that we can give to all parties that spoke this evening and say, this is where we sit right now in our legal position. But let's have that dialogue over the next 6 months to a year, because that's likely what it'll take to review the zoning bylaw and all of that. So it's never a quick process. So I set that expectation for those who may or may not think that it is. So what I would encourage parties to do is take that step back and continue to try and get along until we, you know, engage everybody in the process and develop a new, either a very strong affirmation of, you know, how short-term rentals are going to be addressed. And for Ms. Edwards, you spoke in your correspondence about canceling a great variety of bookings that you had. In the short term, I would encourage that until we have clarity on the matter. I know that's a financial imposition, but I'm in no position or place to impose that on you. I'm just asking all parties to try and work cooperatively in the near future while we sort out definitively what the actual current and future policy on that will be. And no doubt there's other parties out there not appearing on my screen tonight who are you know, in the same situation, and it just hasn't come to our attention yet. So not trying to point fingers at anybody. We're in a very difficult position here of trying to accommodate all parties related to this. So That's all I can say for this evening. I hope I've described, how it can roll out as far as getting clarity on it. CAO Johnston, do you have any, more recent point of view to add to our bylaw enforcement side of it, I guess I'd ask?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure it's new information. I would just like to make a few very broad overview comments to give the matter some perspective. I agree with everything you've said. I'd like to acknowledge the presentations made by everyone this evening. You articulated your position calmly and reasonably, and I appreciate that. And I do want to add that dealings that many of you here on the screen have had with my colleagues, particularly Doug LaPlante, the Director of Planning, have also been very reasonable and calm, and I appreciate that very much, because as you might imagine, when issues become contentious, sometimes the relationship with the professional staff in the municipality might become strained. That hasn't happened here. It is good timing, and I mean that in a positive way, in that, as the mayor and others have mentioned, we are required by law to undertake a review of our official plan every 10 years. And so we're doing that now. So that's good timing. The mayor has indicated it's not going to be a quick process, but I do want to emphasize a couple of points have been made from the presenters tonight, that they hope that there will be input and the public will be engaged. I want to assure you, as the CAO, that is first and foremost in an OP amendment and an OP review, that there will be ample opportunity for everyone to provide input into this process. I wasn't here when the last one was done, but I do understand in talks that I've had with Mr. LaPlante and confirm what the mayor said, that the last OP amendment we did review, the public input was underwhelming. Perhaps it was because there wasn't any issues that had come to the forefront as we have now, and not to take the issue and minimize it by saying this, but as the mayor has indicated, this is not a problem particular to Bonfield. The issue of the presence of Airbnbs across the province is becoming more and more of an issue for a variety of reasons. So a lot of municipalities, fellow CAOs that I have talked to, other directors of planning that Doug has talked to, are all having the same issue. And the resolution to it is going to be, as everyone, I was pleased to hear that there was consensus on both sides, that all the parties agree that what we need to do is have a dialogue and have a review of the issues in which there's public input. And I can assure you on behalf of council and my colleagues that will be very much a priority in the review of the official plan amendment. So we are going to look at it. Doug and I have already started the process. The mayor has indicated that the formal endorsement of the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw review will take place tonight by a resolution from the Planning Advisory Committee. So it's all started formally tonight, but we've already, Doug and I have talked about these issues for some time now. And as I said, the official plan amendment was not something that we thought we should do. It's required by law. So it was just good timing. So we will proceed with that, and we will welcome any input that the public have from time to time about that. And the official plan amendment process by law and by our own policy in Bonfield requires complete access by the public for input and participation in the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope I've covered all the bases on the subject there for this evening, but we'll close out on that for tonight. And I thank everybody for their participation. Okay, moving to minutes from reports of municipal committees and boards. Planning advisory. Yes, Councillor Poison.
I was a chair at that meeting, and a substantial amount of consents that were brought to the meeting. 10, I believe, so. It was a full meeting.
Okay, yes, I see you said substantial amount of work. Fire department.
The system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the
We did have
conference
a quick meeting with
ended.
Peter and
If you wish for the lines to remain connected, please press any key.
fire department did have a meeting with Peter and the fire chief and deputy chief. We did discuss a few things. We needed, I think there was we had a ad in the flyer trying to get more members or how to attract more firefighters. Our group right now is getting below, well, I think we're down to 12 members. We should have about 25. And we talked about that and getting more, some more equipment that might be needed and what we can purchase and so on. So we had a pretty good talk and waiting to get to the other meeting. So.
Okay, thank you.
That.
Library also had a meeting on the 21st. Yes.
Yeah, the main thing from the meeting is the resignation of Tamala Price Fry, who told her goodbye.
Okay. General government has not had a meeting, although the CAO has indicated to me that we soon will, in that the budget submission, I believe, is prepared and he's seeking dates for us to review that. Is that the case?
Yes, sir. In fact, I had a lengthy discussion this afternoon on the budget with Brian Rogers, and we've prepared a final version for submission to you and council at the General Government Committee meeting. We just need to make some final adjustments on material we're getting from the auditors from the 2020 financial statements. So my expectation is that after I review the revised budget with my department heads, I will present it to you and council and suggest that you convene a meeting of the General Government and Finance Committee meeting sometime perhaps towards the end of the month or first week in August. So we're very close to being ready to go with that.
Okay, thank you. Police Services has not had a meeting, although since our last council meeting, there's come some clarity related to the new detachment board style police services board governance that the new Police Services Act is going to impose upon OPP customers, us being one of them. In that, there was scenarios floated about with the detachment is large and it covers Nipissing and Powassan all the way through the Highway 17 corridor to Mattawa and eastern part of Papineau-Cameron Township. And then it also stretches out Highway 63 to LD and Thorn. So all of those communities in there, including Chisholm Township, are now going to be one detachment board group. In there, Chisholm Township took up the challenge of there can be basically subgroups within the larger detachment, and they floated some scenarios of how that should play. And because it would be quite unwieldy to have a police services board covering that large of a piece of geography. So the ministry recognizes that. And the scenario that we've kind of settled upon that our municipality will be in will be with East Ferris and Chisholm Township. So will be what's called the Central. There's a Eastern group, which is Mattawa, Matawan, Papineau-Cameron, and Calvin. And then there'll also be Nipissing and Powassan in a Powassan type detachment board. So that all needs to be approved by the ministry and all the councils at some point, or police services boards, I should say. But that's where everybody's kind of found agreement on how these boards within the larger detachment should develop. Emergency management has not had any meetings, but we meet every second Wednesday of late related to the COVID-19 situation, and we will be meeting again tomorrow morning. in that regard. And Public Works, and I just saw your email earlier this evening when I was digging through some correspondence there, and I see we're ready to go with a Public Works Committee meeting. There's a couple of substantial items on there. And for tonight, I won't say that we're not going to wait, I don't think, until the normal Tuesday in August, because that won't give us a lot of time. But once we get a little bit better indication, well, I guess I just received it, the budget meeting will be near the end of the month. We're going to have our Public Works meeting prior to those budget discussions, I believe. So it'll be within the next week to 10 days, I would think. But we'll talk about it perhaps tomorrow and formalize a date and a time that works for the members of council as well. So then we'll go back to motions of the committees. I believe only planning has motions tonight. Is that correct, Andre? Okay. And there's quite a number of them. So I'll start with them. And the first one is application B10 2021, William Hardman. I'd take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B10 2021 William Hardman be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. The next one is B11, 2021, DeMarco Pietro. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B11, 2021, Marco DeMarco and Merla Pietro be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. The next one, B12, 2021, Mike Moran. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B12 2021 Michael Moran be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Next one, D. Tessier, application B13 2021. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B13 2021 Guy Tessier be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Next one, application B14 2021, Paul Conta. Take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B14 2021 Paul Conta be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Next one, B15, Morris Duquette and Debbie Cotnam. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B15 2021 Morris Duquette and Debbie Cottenham be approved. Be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached decision of approval authority form. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Next one is B16, Marcel LaBelle, Patricia Veltri. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Viancourt. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B16 2021 Marcel LaBelle and Patricia Veltri be approved. Be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached decision of approval authority form. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Next one, B17, 2021, Robert Dugard and Judy Rogers Dugard. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Viancourt, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B17, 2021, Robert Dugard and Judy Rogers Dugard be approved. Be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached decision of approval authority form. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Next one, as I mentioned earlier, relates to the review of our official plan and zoning bylaw as recommended by the Planning Advisory Committee. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Viancourt, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Bear with me one moment here. Whereas the Director of Planning and Development has advised the Planning Advisory Committee to consider making a recommendation to Council to start the process to begin an official plan review by way of producing a new official plan and updating zoning bylaw 2012-49. And whereas the Director of Planning and Development advised the Planning Advisory Committee that over the past 8 years, several things have developed that should be regulated through the official plan and zoning bylaw. And whereas the official plan was originally approved in March of 2013 with several amendments to the current zoning bylaw. And whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council to undertake a request for proposal process to retain a consulting firm to lead an official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw review and produce a new official plan and updated zoning bylaw. Be it hereby resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, and further that the Director of Planning and Development be requested to draft a request for proposal for submission to Council for to undertake a request for proposal process to retain a consultant to lead an official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw review program. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. That closes out our motions of committees. We're now moving to reports of non-municipal committees and boards. Phenom, there's been nothing from them unless. Pardon?
Sorry, the library CAO would like your recommendations on how to replace that vacant seat.
I see. Yes, I saw that in their minutes. And I noted that in the minutes in that if they're asking as a courtesy gesture, that's great because the board has its own authority as an independent board to choose how they seek to replace that member because that's a public appointee to the board. So it's up to the board itself how they choose to seek a replacement member. But if they're asking council's advice, my personal opinion is that they should call for applications for a new board member. Is there other
Advise
members of
them.
council that have suggestions? Okay, so yeah, just I guess give them that feedback that will help with the process of posting it and so forth to find them another board member.
Thank you.
Okay. So Phenom, there's nothing from them, and the Conservation Authority, our member rep is not here this evening, but we'll get that report at our next meeting of council. I guess the most, certainly the most financially impactful decision we'll make tonight is this next one of Castleholm, which is why I asked that it be highlighted on our agenda package. I've spoken at length so many times on the subject, and the CAO and myself have participated weekly now in these Zoom meetings related to the financing of the new Castleholm redevelopment. And in your package, there's some spreadsheets and a lot of media coverage and everything else related to Castleholm and its $122 million necessary reconstruction. I guess in a nutshell, to bring it to summary, and the CAO can remind me of any important factor I've left out, but to summarize it, we're a 3.15% owner of a municipally owned long-term care home. And it's great to be a very small percentage owner at these times when there's money to be paid to build a new one. And I'll bring to your attention, if you're using the spreadsheet as a guide, point or column 17, the true cost, if financed through Infrastructure Ontario, for our municipality over 25 years is $2,187,000. And in column 18, and much of the dialogue among the member municipalities has been the fact that the province is putting $66 million into helping the municipal owners rebuild their nursing home, but they're not handing the money up front. What they're agreeing to do is the same as I'm encouraging us to do, is that we're going to pay it over 25 years. In the province's case, they're going to pay their $66 million to Castleholm on an annual basis. The only wrinkle that causes for us as municipal owners is that Infrastructure Ontario is adamant that, as an arm's length banker of the province of Ontario, that provincial share of money needs to be guaranteed by whoever the owner of the facility is. And the owner of the facility is the member municipalities, us being a 3% owner. And as I've tried to bring clarity when that concern is raised among the member municipalities, if there ever comes a day that the province defaults on their payments on mortgages, we have a lot bigger issues in the province of Ontario to grapple with than the fact that the payments are late for Castleholm. Because if the province defaults on their payments that we're co-signing on, basically, something catastrophic has happened. So column 18 describes to you $1,228,000 as the total amount the Infrastructure Ontario is asking us to sign on the dotted line and guarantee that, as good friends of the province of Ontario, we're sure they're going to pay. And on that basis, I don't have hesitancy in guaranteeing the provincial portion. What did cause a lot of concern to the member municipalities, and particularly the city of North Bay, where that number is large, is that how does that show in your financial statements, first of all? And second of all, how does it restrict your future borrowing for everything else we do in our municipal operations, aside from a nursing home that we own? And as luck would have it, as a advising consultant to these meetings that we've held, Dean DeCare through BDO, who is our auditor, spoke very directly to that issue, and it's his very strong opinion and his advice to the municipalities that are his customer, that liability will show on our financial statements as a note down in it that, you know, by the way, the Township of Bonfield over the next 25 years, 24, 23, as it drops off the table, owes this amount of money, and it guaranteed the province of Ontario's share as well. But it will not hinder or impact our balance sheet. And it also, advice was sought from Municipal Affairs on the matter, because every municipality has a debt ceiling limit that they can get into. And clarity was found on that through quite complicated wording, but as you sort through the bureaucraties, the smoke cleared, and it's not going to hamper our ability to borrow the guarantee on behalf of the province of Ontario. So it's good on 2 points, in that it's not going to hamper our ability to borrow. It's not going to show as a devastating liability in the calendar year that it was acquired for the member municipalities that enter into it. So boiling that all down, if Infrastructure Ontario agrees to finance this, and that's where you may have heard in the media there's urgency to move forward and get to, they have board meetings, and they have, as being $122 million loan, this is going to have substantial review at their head office level in late August, according to the Castle Home Board. What's of the most concern to this municipality is the $124,089 annually that this is going to represent as our payment to build a new nursing home. So if it comes to a number on an annual basis and we get financed over 25 years, that's, as it sits today with the interest rates that are in play with all of the formulas that they're using, $124,000 a year is what it comes to for us. So CEO Johnston, is there anything I've overlooked in saying to kind of bring clarity to that?
Well, actually, what I'd like to do is commend you, Your Worship, because as you know very well, you mentioned you and I have been to a number of meetings weekly with this group, and it's be no surprise for you to hear from me that the people in the managing group, the lawyers, the auditors, the IO people, and so on, are all good people, and they're trying to do a very difficult job, but running a meeting is not their strong suit. And so I want to commend you right now, because what you did was articulate the issue in about 10 minutes, where over the course of hours and hours, 10, 12, 15 hours, they have been unable to do that. Every week we have a 2-hour meeting, and it just goes round and round and round and round. At the end of the meeting, you and I go, what did we decide here? No, you covered it exactly, Your Worship. On the issue of the guarantee, I just want to put it in perspective for council. That note that Dean DeCare says will be on our financial statement is similar to the note regarding our liability for the landfill. It comes up every year when we get our financial statements. Somebody says, well, you know, are we actually on the hook for that $100,000 a year for the landfill site? No, we're not. It says that in the event years down the road, if we are required to come up with that kind of money for our landfill site, we will. And that's all the guarantee note would say. So again, to finish off, I agree entirely with your summary of the issue, and just that as you know, we have a resolution tonight. Most of the other municipalities have had a meeting. Many of them had meetings last Monday. Some had meetings last week to endorse the plan for the municipal share, which is what the Castle Home Board needs now. How it rolls out, everyone has in their package scenario 1, 2, and 3, which are options as to how we might roll in the provincial share and our share. But what the management board at Castle Home and IO want to hear is that we agree to the financing. And as the mayor pointed out, the money that we will be required to pay annually for 25 years is well within our annual repayment limit. We just got it. We just got this year's limit a month ago. And it's about $680,000. That means we could borrow enough money, whatever the interest rates are, we could borrow enough money to generate an annual interest and principal payment every year of $680,000. That's a lot of money. So the 122,000 and change that we're being asked to commit is well within our limit. I would be remiss in not saying, and I know that the mayor has the same concern, he certainly does, that I do have a concern about all the issues that this municipality is going to have to face in the next 10 years, let alone 25. Asset management and infrastructure that's not included in our asset management plan, that any sort of commitment of that amount for 25 years is something that we're going to have to watch. This council and future councils and future CAOs are going to have to watch very closely. But the proposal that the mayor summarized tonight, I think is the option that we need to move on to go forward with this.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions on it before I seek a mover and a seconder for the motion that's in our package? Okay, I assume the pre-prepared motion was in the agenda for your review. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas Castle Home proposed redevelopment will address needed long-term care improvements in our community, and whereas Infrastructure Ontario, IO, has the best, most economical, and most viable option available to Castle Home and the municipalities for the redevelopment of Castle Home. And whereas IO requires a guarantee from the proponents for the entire loan amount of the redevelopment project in order for Castle Home to secure the required funding under the IO's corporate loan program. And whereas the Corporation of the Township of Bonfield supports this borrowing by the Board of Management for Castle Home and acknowledges that any repayments on the borrowed sums that the board is required to make that are not covered by the available current revenues of the board are subject to apportionment to supporting municipalities under subsection 126(1) of the Long-Term Care Homes Act. Now therefore be it resolved that the Corporation of the Township of Bonfield agrees to enter into a guarantee with IO substantially in the form of the draft attached hereto as Appendix A. We understand that the guarantee will remain in draft format until such time as the loan is approved by IO and that all other documentation has been finalized. The Corporation of the Township of Bonfield hereby ratifies and approves this. Any questions? All in favor? Oh, yes, CAO Johnson.
Not a question, Your Worship, just a comment that for members of council, the language in that motion was crafted by the Castle Home Board and by IO. And it's the same motion that we're looking at tonight that has been before all the other councils involved in the project. It's the exact same motion. The only thing different is the apportionment figure, but it's the same motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. No notices of motion. No bylaws. Disbursements. I'll take a mover and a seconder before I open up questions. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Foisey. We can fire away on questions on the disbursements. Any questions on the disbursements? Yes, Councillor Vinecore. You just muted yourself there by accident. Okay.
Do you know if anybody turned down the proposal from the Castle Home?
Not yet, but most councils are meeting this evening, and the
Okay.
city of North Bay meets on Thursday night about it in a special meeting. The only one I know about having approved it so far is Matawan Township, but they're the smallest shareholder. But Calvin, Papineau Cameron, ourselves are all meeting this evening that I know of at least, probably Chisholm as well. So there'll be probably 4 decisions by tomorrow morning at the minimum.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any questions on the disbursements at all? Okay, I'll read the motion, and then if you find something you want to ask about before I call the vote, we can do that. Moved by Councillor Viancourt, seconded by Councillor Foisey, that the following disbursements be approved as prepared. All departments under APO 5764 for a subtotal of $428,776.66, and payroll batches 1150 to 1155 totaling $62,289.49, resulting in a total disbursement of $491,066.15. Any questions on any of the line items at all? Yes, Councillor Viancourt.
Just the page 1 of 5 on energy plan audit. Is that just something that we do all the time, or is that something new with
that we had put out a request for proposal on that, I think, one point, and awarded it, and it's a mandated requirement of the province. But if CEO Johnston wants to describe more.
No, you're right, Worship. Councillor Viancourt, you may be taken aback simply by the language, because normally when we've discussed this at council, I refer to it as the municipal energy plan, and that was awarded to JL Richards, and we got a grant to do that. And as the mayor said, it's required by law.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Correspondence and information. Application to license the shore road allowance from Christine Woods and Lena Dominelli. I'll take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Viancourt. Whereas Christine Woods and Lena Dominelli has submitted an application for license to use a portion of the shore road allowance on their property at 4 Lakeshore Road to rebuild an existing dock and import gravel. And whereas the Director of Planning and Development has reviewed this application and recommends to Council to approve Christine Woods and Lena Dominelli's proposal to license a portion of the shore road allowance as per the attached application, with a condition that all permits be obtained from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, Oceans and Fisheries, and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, if required, prior to issuing the license. Be it hereby resolved that Council approves of this recommendation. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Firefighter application, Alexandria Etche. I'd take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Viancourt, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas Fire Chief Gilles LaBelle has recommended to Council that the application submitted by Alexandria Etche be accepted as a volunteer firefighter for the Township of Bonfield's Volunteer Fire Department. Be it hereby resolved that Council approves of this recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Motion of commitment of funds regarding Heritage Fund and FedNor grants. It's describing that there's over $1 million worth of grant, 10% municipal contribution. And I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Viancourt. Whereas the Council of the Township of Bonfield submitted an application for funding under the NOHFC Community Enhancement, Rural Enhancement Funding, and to FedNor Canada Community Revitalization Fund for the Waterfront Development Project. Be it hereby resolved that council confirms its financial commitment of $110,107 of eligible costs for this project, and that the township will be responsible for any overage not included in the original quotes. Any questions? CAO Johnston.
Again, not so much a question, Your Worship, just a reminder to council that this is the grant we originally got from NHOFC for the waterfront plan. And I had spoken to Mr. Rouhani after the motion to commit to our level of funding. And I said, is there any way that we can reduce that, our level of commitment? And he said, well, if we got more money from somewhere else to stack it, which is a common approach to grants, stacking the grants. So I said, well, see what you can do on that. So he talked to NHOFC about whether stacking would be permitted. He talked to FEDNOR, Guy Paquette, and was able to, on his own initiative, come up with more money, which would reduce the commitment from the township, because the amount of money being provided by NHOFC would be reduced because we've got money now from FEDNOR. And the only other comment I want to make is that just to reassure everyone that total cost of the project and our commitment of $110,000, that's the upset limit. What we're still working on right now is getting final approvals on the grant. I had to sign some documents, or I will rather, after this evening with FEDNOR. But once all the grants are approved finally, and we received a letter on that behalf, we haven't talked about tendering this project or what the cost might be when they come in, or even what level of work we'll do. So that's still in the purview of council. I don't want you to think that you're committing us to in excess of $1 million project and 110,000 from Bonville. That's the upset limit, and it will depend on getting those two grants approved, and then finally getting some eligible bids and quotes on doing the work, and then council deciding how much of that work they want done.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Vancouver.
Yeah, so Peter, just to clarify, the 110 ain't spent until if we get the $1 million, right?
That's right. That's the upside limit we'd be asked to commit.
Yes, then that's the top end of the, okay. And if we get low, if we do end up getting half, maybe whatever we get, it'll be adjusted to that.
Yeah, that 110,000, Councillor, is based on the full extent of the grant. So if the money we eventually wind up with is less than that, then our commitment will be less as well, because it's tied to a percentage.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Information. There was no information in the council package related to filling the vacant seat on council, but is that an oversight, or this item one? Yes.
Well, if it was an oversight, I'll take it. Not our acting deputy clerk. No, because she asked me about it, and I said all we need to do this evening is we've already declared the seat vacant, so we need to fill that vacancy within 60 days. That's the law. And I said, so all we're going to do on Tuesday evening is I'm just going to remind council that basically there are two options here, only two. We could have a by-election. An actual election to elect another member to that seat, just like a regular election, the full costs and the full process. I certainly would not recommend that, given that there's less than a year and a half to go in this term. The only other option is to do it by appointment. Now, in that regard, you have basically two sub options on appointment. One, you could simply agree amongst yourselves of an individual who agrees in writing to accept the appointment and appoint that person, one person. Option number two is that you would advertise locally for eligible candidates to submit their name in writing. We have to have them say in writing that if you are nominated for this appointment, will you accept it? So they have to do that in writing. There's been a number of seat vacancies in our district this past year and a half, and I think all of them have gone the route that I've just mentioned. Appointment where you solicit interested parties. They have to be a qualified elector. What all that means. You receive the letters of interest. We have a council meeting that's within that 60-day time limit, and then there's a vote. I checked with some of my colleagues. I checked with municipal affairs. I looked in the legislation. The vote is by a show of hands. It needs to be in a public meeting and a show of hands. And you simply the deputy clerk would have a list of the interested candidates who have filed their names in writing. And we'd have a vote in alphabetical order, and the majority votes, in this case, we have four votes. The majority votes wins. It's that simple.
Okay, so for tonight, do you need us to, I think, based on what you said there, we need to, obviously we need to appoint somebody, but we also need to start the process of getting the applications. So do you need a motion this evening authorizing you to build the criteria for applications?
I would say no, Your Worship. Just a verbal direction from council and recorded in this meeting that Andre and I will prepare a process as to how we'll do this, and it will essentially be language that we would post on our website, put out on Citizens Alert, and any other means to get the word out there. And once you have approved the language in that ad, and the ad will be very simple because it's also dictated by law. But that's pretty much all we need, Your Worship. And then it will be a matter of setting a cutoff date to receive those letters, and scheduling a vote at the next available council meeting within that 60-day limit. We've got lots of time to do that.
Okay, Councillor Foisey?
Yes, I believe we already had 2 candidates that submitted letters. Will those count even if they were before the submission?
I defer to the mayor, but I would certainly say they would count, Councillor Foisey.
Okay, well, it's just a matter of accepting them officially at some point, I guess, but okay. I'm sure if they're paying attention anyway, they'll make sure and recopy us on it if it's otherwise.
That would be a good idea, but you're right, yeah.
Okay, so is council in agreement to proceed on that basis then? I know it under the Elections Act, it's pretty prescribed what we need to do anyway, as far as your advertising and everything else. So
Yeah, I think it's good to go with that.
Good to go.
okay, staff has direction to proceed then on an appointment application basis.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2, Bill C-21. There's 2 items there related to it, both Kingsville and other municipalities related to Bill C-21. I think since that information is received, has not Bill C-21 already passed in the federal parliament, or? Yeah, okay. So it's information for this evening anyway. And then also item 4, Mississauga motion of support re-Canada Day. Well, Canada Day has happened, and they've illustrated how they were celebrating it this year virtually and in recognition of Indigenous issues. And the health unit, their description of their health funding for 2022 and their board minutes were in our package. There's no new business and there's no unfinished business. I guess we're down to confirmatory bylaw. I'd take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas council deems it expedient to pass 3 readings of the following bylaw at this session, be it hereby resolved that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council from June 8th, 2021 to July 13th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered 2021-20, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. All in favor? Carried. One item, because she sat so patiently through our meeting, at the Public Works mention, I failed to ask for a manager's report. Did you have a brief one you want to give? Because I overlooked asking earlier in the evening, Anne?
No, for sure.
Okay.
I'd like to just let our citizens know that the roadside grass cutting should start the first week of August. It was kind of ironic how we fought the dry spell to do calcium, then fought the rain to get it in on the ground, and have fought the rain ever since. We built a rough road into the gazebo in the Rutherglen Old Park, so that if any future decisions are to be made, people can get in and out of there, and we can also remove brush. So like I said, it is a rough road, but it's a work in progress. Next week, we're going to start ditching Trout Pond South, all the way down to the large culvert structure at the bottom, past the Shank Farm. We started our culvert work, our ditching work, and good for the township that we traded days off on Canada Day because Pine Lake began flooding the road. So we had to have the MNR involved, the Conservation Authority involved. The lake is very swollen, and we had to place an emergency culvert that day. So that's my little report for everybody, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the motion of the evening then is the motion to adjourn. Yes, Councillor Vinecourt?
Just one question for Anne with the dump. Last week when I went, I drove into, I don't know if they ran out of sand to put on top because they had bulldozed and we were going over garbage that was already there. And I was a little worried about maybe somebody getting flats. So I don't know if we didn't have enough coverage to put over top. Do you know, are we going to keep going that way and that towards the back or?
Well, we have lots of sand since we take it from the embankment that's in the landfill itself. So it could have been an oversight. I'm hoping that we always try to mitigate the landfill so that in the winter time, it's not as a large area.
Yeah.
So that we can come back and not have to look after so much of it to plow it and have it prepared for the residents to use. So hopefully we come back. Like COVID.
Got any flat tires or?
I haven't been reported to myself at all, but
okay.
I know our backhoe has taken a few.
Yeah. I noticed on the Saturday that the cover material was sparse in the most traveled area there. And it could
in the back. Yeah.
More. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So I take a motion to adjourn. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Vinecourt. Seconded by Councillor Foisey. That this meeting adjourn at 8:32 p.m. All in favor? Carried, and thank you.
Just a reminder that the decision of
Yes.
approval forms will be in your boxes sometime tomorrow for you guys to stop by and sign, please.
There's quite a number of them. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Right.